Welcome to the Why Coaching Works podcast. My name is Monte Wyatt, and I'm here to take you on a journey into the world of coaching, exploring its many different facets and uncovering its profound impact on individuals, businesses, and executives alike. We'll be delving into real-life case studies combined with in-depth research from coaching experts to give you a better understanding of why coaching works today. So if you're ready to begin your exploration into the power of coaching, then let's get started. Before we start today's episode, here's a short message from Adding Zero's Executive Development. As CEO, you demand performance and results from your team. If you're committed to developing a cohesive, driven organization that achieves successful outcomes every single month, we need to talk. It's time to see how organizational and executive development from Adding Zeros can help. We focus on strategic planning, executive coaching, team alignment and engagement, organizational culture, and clarity of implementation. Contact me, Monte Wyatt, by booking an appointment at AddZerosNow.com. That's AddZerosNow, AddZerosNow.com. If you're ready, now is the time. I have 2 coaching spots available for 2024. Lock in your team today. Now let's begin today's episode. Welcome to the Why Coaching Works podcast, where we talk about the impact of coaching, growth of businesses, and personal development. I'm your host, Monte Wyatt, and if you are a CEO, executive, or business owner, then this is the show for you. We call our audience the achiever because you are always after achieving that next milestone. It is a pleasure today to have a great friend of mine joining us all around the world from Australia. He is a 10-time Global Coach of the Year winner. He owns and is founder of Entrepreneurial Business School, where he impacts thousands of business owners. He's got a team of coaches that he works with, and he loves his family dearly, his wife, Georgie, and their 4 children. So welcome, Bruce Campbell from Australia.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Monty. Pleasure to be on.
You know, we were just talking. It's probably been since pre-COVID since we've seen each other. It's been about 3.5 years. We last saw each other in Las Vegas, doing a little executive coach training.
Yeah, look, good times and pleasure to be on the podcast today, buddy.
Well, I appreciate your insight and your knowledge and your time today. That's for sure. You know, this is a great show to learn about coaching and hear some experiences. And I first want to start off, Bruce, if you tell us, how did you get in the coaching business?
Well, it's interesting that one coaching experience leads to another coaching experience. So I've played the game of rugby union for about 26 years. I don't play it anymore. But literally, I was at a rugby union training, and one of my coaches came to me, and he was in like a motel hotel business, and he said to me, "I'm starting in a coaching business, like I'm doing this coaching thing," and I said to him, where are you going to drive the buses to and from? And he said, "No, you idiot, it's business coaching." And I'm like, "Tell me about that." This is like 20 years ago, Monty. And he described, going into, essentially like sports coaching, but for business. And I was in business at the time, and I went, "Man, that is exactly what I want to do." And so I investigated it, and paid a bunch of money to get into the thing, and literally borrowed money off my father, who's now gone to heaven. And you fast forward 20 years, and now we're one of the biggest business coaching organization in the Asia Pacific region. It's been a life-changing process, and like yourself, lead a life-changing process for the clients as well.
You know, I love how you said it's life-changing. It's not only life-changing for your clients, but for you yourself, isn't it?
Well, look, I mean, look, I'm a big believer is you got to eat your own cooking and not throw up. Like, if you get into any type of advising, you don't matter what it is, you have to be eating your own cooking. And so that's been one of the hallmarks of what we've done. I've done a huge amount of personal development. When I tallied it up the other day, I said to my wife Georgie, who you mentioned earlier, we've both invested about $1.4 million into our own education.
Yep.
And I look back and some of the early days, Monty, we couldn't afford it. Like I was putting courses and books and all of that type of investment on a credit card, back in the day. But it's the old thing. If you're not investing in your own transformation, you're not going to get any transformation. So we've done a huge amount with that. I've worked with a lot of great mentors over the years. Keith Cunningham, who's the Rich Dad out of Rich Dad Poor Dad book, the Money in You organization. A huge amount of mentors over the years, and I've still got them around me because I can't see myself swing the golf club. I need people looking in at me and questioning me and giving me guidance. So for me, that's the big trick. But you're right, you got to be eating your own cooking.
And growth is a never-ending process. Just as you said, you always have your mentors around you, and you should always have your mentors around you, because we always have the next level, we always have the next challenge, the next need, the next push for everyone. Everyone needs that next push.
Yeah, and look, I think it takes a strong person to be vulnerable. One of the things that and I've got more of a sort of a dominant personality, so to allow feedback in, that's the trick, man. Like, the vulnerable, where you can actually, one of the best questions I ever this is that I learned from a profile called the Flippin profile. They're based out of College Station in Texas. And basically these guys, they've got a psych profile. I know there's a lot of psych profiles out there, DISC and Myers-Briggs, and there's a whole heap that, been done for 100 years. And I was doing a lot of work with them, and they said to me, Bruce, when you're getting feedback, to be able to accept that and actually then say, thank you, what else do you see in me? And keep that cycle going, so that basically, it allows me to go, and then is there any more? What else can you do? And then eventually get to a point where they go, that's it, go work in those areas, and you'll be a better human being, you'll be a better leader. But it takes, most people, they want to justify, they want to excuse, blame other people. That's their process. That's probably what they've done. Another one that I always find is they deflect, right? Or
Yes.
or they make a joke, right, just to kind of get you off the scent, if you know what I mean. Rather than just saying, "Come on, what do you got for me? How can I be a better human?"
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's millions of types of coaches out in the world. How do you define coaching? What are the things that you use to define what you do as a coach?
Well, look, I mean, it's funny. We've been in this game now 20 years, and but if my mum was on this podcast, she's 85. She would say, Bruce, you've been essentially a coach all of your life, really. Like I was captaining, rugby or cricket teams, when I was 10, etc. So I suppose it's been in my DNA forever. And I think a lot of great coaches, that's kind of how they grow up. A lot of them, they'll come out of some sport or cultural or school, etc. So, they've probably been on that type of leadership. But for me, the way I define it, even though it's, I think, genetically in there, is, we're a leader. Great coaches, great leaders. We've got the Rugby World Cup on at the moment, which I'm following. And look, at the end of the day, the team that stands on that podium and lifts the cup, that they've been at that. They've got coaches and leaders in the background that have been, that'll be a 4-year journey, maybe longer for a lot of those type of people. And I think it's the same in business, is that, coaching is a leadership, it's a responsibility. And, I don't think that it's an overnight process, Monty, to be frank. You look at the great coaches in business and they've been doing it a while. They just didn't wake up last week and go, hey, let's go do something. It's like they've been at it a while.
Yeah, absolutely. I love how you said that a great coach is a great leader. And they're leading not only themselves, but they're leading others to help them see things that maybe they can't see. And I think that's whether it's sport or it's business, you help lead people to see things that they can't see.
Exactly. I love that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'd love to hear an example or two of how you've helped someone get to where they wanted to get to, how you coach them and what they achieved because of the impact that you had on their life.
Well, look, I've got a good one. I mean, I got many, but I got a relevant one because it's timely. And it's always interesting, seeing people in business achieve more than they ever thought they could. So for me, that's like the juice right there, is that it allows that transformation on where people don't think it's possible. So great example. 6 years ago, Monty, I got referred to a client. They went to like a business networking luncheon at a bank over here in Australia and New Zealand, right? And these guys basically were referred to me. I got on an aeroplane, I flew over, signed them up to a business coaching program, and about 3 weeks later, they're sitting in my boardroom. Now, they basically sat down and they said to me, Bruce, look, we know we've signed up with you, but maybe we don't do the coaching on our business. How about you just coach us to sell it? And I was like, well, hang on, we haven't even sort of started coaching yet. Do you think we should just give it a try before you put your business on the market? They said, well, that's probably a good idea. And I said, look, whilst we're there, how much would you take for the business? And they said, look, $800,000, $900,000, $1 million, we'd be delighted. And I was like, well, that's interesting. Anyway, so we got in, we coached them for the last 6 years, 10x their profit. They're out buying investment properties, working on the wealth side of their life. And long story short, about last September, they came to me and they said, we think we've got a buyer. And I said, they're in their late 50s, so it's probably about time. And I said to them, well, look, who is it? And they said, look, it's a multi-billion euro company out of Italy. And I said, well, look, those guys don't take prisoners. You got to get this right. Like, you get one shot. I like what Keith Cunningham said to me about selling businesses. He says it's kind of like sheep. You only get to kill it once, right? Like you don't get a second go at it, right? So you got to get it right. And I said that to them, and they said, can you help us? And so I've essentially been, Monty, brokering this deal for the last 11 months. So essentially, end of August just gone, they got 14.1 million for that business. And, it's just changed their life. So, and it's like, and you think about it, they would have taken an $800,000 or $900,000 check 6 years ago. So that's a relevant one at the moment.
I love that story, the result of that. Tell us a little bit about how you caused them to transform. Was it their knowledge that they needed to grow in? Was it their behavior? Was it their mindset? Where did you help them the most? And maybe it was a combination of all of those.
So look, I mean, the first thing is the mindset. That needs to shift. They were, and if they were on the webinar today, they'd say it. They had like a scarcity mindset around money. It was there was never enough. There was a lack. So therefore, that showed up in their decision makings around hiring team, the amount of marketing investment that needed to do. So once we kind of got them over that hump, we did huge amount of work on their probably three things. There's their skill around financials, did a huge amount on financial literacy. Then we, then got them cranked on marketing so that we expanded the business. So, frankly, they weren't doing nearly enough marketing and sales, business development. So we got them really cranking on that. Which then obviously we needed team. So essentially that was the process there, and it was hugely successful.
I love how you tied so many things together there. It's about education. You brought education and financial mastery, but the foundation was the mindset. They had to change their way of thinking, and then they added education so they could grow, whether it was about finances, whether it was about marketing, whether it was about their team. So it's education and mindset, because a lot of folks say, oh, you're a life coach. No, we're much more than a life coach. We're helping you grow yourself and your business, and that's the power of the impact that you've had on that company.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, look, and then here's an interesting distinction that I got from that deal, right? Is and it'll be the same in the Americas, same everywhere. So essentially, in terms of our team, we had attorney, accountant, and lead negotiator, or the coach. But the interesting thing is so anytime the lawyers get involved, if our side gets on, their side has to get on. If our accountant gets on, that their side has to get on, right? And I had this pathway to two decision makers on the buying side. And so essentially, to keep the lawyers and the accountants away from it, because, there's been many a deal that have fallen over because of the advisors got in and stuffed it up.
Right.
But I had like a pathway to the decision makers. And basically, literally for about 2 months there, every Friday night I was on to Italy having Zoom calls with my counterparts saying, how do we get this? How do we write this? What do we got to do? Etc. Etc. So, for me, I was a really good distinction around who's on your, yeah, and it'd be on both sides too. Who's on your acquiring side, and also who's on, the other side of the fence as well.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's a huge story of 6 years of work. So many people think that it's an overnight to make change and things like that. That was 6 years in the making. That's fantastic.
Yeah,
That's good.
and look, I mean, at some stages, here's another thought too. Just whilst I'm there sharing learnings on that particular deal, we talk about the right systems in businesses, etc. Now, that deal, where it came down to, Monty, was one piece of paper, and that one piece of paper. Now that they had a policy in that business, right? It's a distribution, import distribution business, whereby they allowed their staff or team members to use the company truck utes for personal use, right? And it came down to I don't know what you could call it in the US, but essentially we call it fringe benefit tax. So
Right.
taxed, is it what you guys call it too?
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So essentially, it came down to, if they'd just had one piece of paper saying, "Hey, you can't use it for personal use," even if they did use it for personal, right? They would have been but essentially the buying accountants said, look, because it was a share sale, they were like, hey, potential if they ever gets audited, so literally it got bogged on one, and if they just had their processes and systems a little bit better. Now we got through it, but I just was like, from a, an exiting of business, how important all those small little things that most people wouldn't give two thoughts on, nearly cost them that whole deal.
Wow. It's the little things, right?
Yeah. So, the message for any coach business out there: make sure all of the small things are checked, and you've got your house in order if you're ever going to exit.
Absolutely right. Oh, that's fantastic. You know, as I think about helping people, and you mentioned relating it to sports, and you've coached sporting teams as well. Tell me how coaching a business relates to coaching sports, or even vice versa, how coaching sports relates to business, because I think it's about people, number one, and it's about teaching them new skills, but also getting their belief system. But tell me, how do you relate the coaching of sport to coaching of business?
It's a great question. I mean, look, the first thing is the structure of how you bring people together. So, one of the best quotes I ever heard on culture and team is, rituals create culture. Rituals create culture. You're going to have a look at any, like special forces in any army, or the Navy SEALs. There's things that those guys and gals do that are ritualized. Like, so if you ever go and do that, and same on the sporting field, there's certain rituals that happen. And I'm a big believer in business is to go, well, what's your rituals? What are you going to bring into that team environment? So, we do a huge amount of them. One of the key ones, as a tool that we do with all of the businesses that we own and operate, we're up to 8 businesses we've now got, Monty, that my wife and I own and operate, is we've got something called what I feel like expressing. This comes out of child psychology, and essentially it's putting people where they can express what's on their mind, good, bad, or ugly. So it gives, and then the beautiful thing on that as a tool is it allows everyone to have a voice. Right. So as with humans, we've got dominant, we've got reserved personalities. The reserved personalities sometimes don't get a voice, right? So, this gives everyone in the group, in the team, that opportunity to share what's on their mind, right? So, there's one ritual. We also have another ritual about celebrating the wins. If you think about it, most people are very, windscreen focused, not rear view mirror. So effectively, it's locking in that win. That gratitude. Let's celebrate. Where we've come and what we've achieved. What benefit have we given? So, I'm a huge believer in teams, whether I'm on, coaching a rugby team. And just so for the record, I actually coached my, 10-year-old rugby team, and a lot of these same principles we bring in. Here's another one. How do you dress? Like for me, if you roll up and everyone's scruffy and looking like the dogs just dragged them in, that's probably had the performance. So, all of our businesses, we've got you know certain dress codes that we all got to live by.
Yep.
Our business coaching firm, as an example, we all wear custom made jackets, etc. We've got French cuffs because that's how we want to roll. So, for me, I'm a big believer in rituals, and whether that be everything from how do you dress to how you perform, and meetings, celebrating the wins, we do all of that.
I love that. I want to reinforce something to our audience. The achiever is rituals create culture, and it's to build teamwork. It's recognizing how you celebrate, how you have open communication, but rituals create culture. I love that phrase. So I want to make sure and challenge our achiever to think about what are your rituals that you have as a team that creates greater teamwork. And so that's fantastic, Bruce. I really appreciate that. That's
My
wonderful.
pleasure.
You know, you said that you have many mentors. You have many people that have helped you and taught you things. Give us an example of a mentor that you've had and what the impact of coaching has made onto you and how you've grown because of that coaching.
Well, look, I've had heaps, but I think, the probably my biggest one that I had through a time like, so, if I roll back in about 09, 08, 2009, 2008, that type of period, I went through a bit of a dip, and Georgie and I speak about it, and I also say, Monty, that success is a shitty teacher, right? Most of the time it's when you're, in the doghouse, that's when you get the best learnings. And, I look back and I had some growing up to do. I went through a period where my ego was red hot, too big, and I another quote from Keith Cunningham is, I let my self-worth get mixed up with my net worth, right? And so I made some dumb decisions, and I had to go off and do a lot of personal development. I got hooked into a program called the Money in You, which is one of the oldest personal development programs on the planet, dating back to the 1970s. And I had to do a bit of a shift, right? So that was sort of the first part of my shift, and then I went and sat in front of Keith Cunningham in Austin, Texas. And it was interesting at the time, my business coaching business, and I sat down in front of him, laid out all my financials, the structure of the company, etc. And he said to me, "This is the worst effing business model I've ever seen, Bruce." And I was like, there's some coaching, right? When you get an F bomb dropped down in the first hour of your coaching, you know that you've got some work to do, right?
Absolutely.
And look, he challenged me, and this is, doesn't matter whether you run a $100,000 business or $1 billion business, doesn't matter. Is the principle of leverage. Ever more with ever less. And he said, how is this business model scalable? How can you leverage it? And I look back, and he was 100% right. It was a crappy business model. And it was unleverageable. I couldn't do that, and I had to make some shift, and we then looked at the model, and how do you do one to many, and etc. And now we've got literally hundreds of people coming to our seminars and workshops and what we do around the planet. And so but I had to have that kind of stern feedback at the front end.
And how did you respond to that? That you had been successful before that. You had felt successful. You said you measured it off your net worth. How did you first respond to that kind of feedback?
Well, look, I mean, initially, for me, it was a little bit of what I was talking before about around, you know, well, look, a couple of times in my life, Monty, right, where I also think that there's significance in the money you put down, right? So at that point, I can't even remember what the coaching fee might have been, 50,000 US for the year, and I didn't have it, man, right? And it's been a few times in my life where, because I've put down, a fair chunk of change, I said to myself, well, you don't have any other choice, mate. Just listen. Like, put the ego aside and just go, right, what do I got to, he's right. and there's been a few instances in my life, Monty, where I've done that, where I've just like, man, you're at the poker table here. You got to listen. Just what's in it. And literally, mate, I got past the ego very, very quickly, and then just went home and started actually taking action. At that time, we sold off a dog of a business that we were running, changed the model of the coaching business, and literally, within 90 days from that particular coaching session, we'd made a shift, and we've never looked back.
That's awesome. And I love how you shared your real life example of being coached. And you do have to set the ego aside. And I think no matter how successful anyone can be, there's always another way of looking at it. There's always another level. There's always a way to rethink where we're going. And I think we've all got ego, but we've all got to set it aside to go to that next level. So I really appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah. And look, I think the most successful people that I have encountered, it's not a straight trajectory, on success. People need to kind of, most of the people that I've seen, they've had a few dry spells. They've had a bit of a dip every now and again, and I think, and being okay to share that too. Again, it's back to that vulnerability, to share that, because it's running businesses, whether you're an executive, an owner, it's a bloody lonely place, mate. Right?
Yeah.
Like this is the other reason why coaching works, is it's people that they can lean on, excuse me, where they can ask the question, how am I doing, or a shoulder to cry on every now and again,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because it's a lonely place being at the top.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'd love to hear your thought. If someone was considering being coached right now, what suggestions or advice would you give them?
Well, look, big picture, from a contextual point of view, the answer is make the decision. Just don't procrastinate. Get in and make a decision to be coached. I think the secondary part there is, do your homework on the coach. And it goes back to before around, you know, uh, coaches eating their own cooking, right? There's plenty of coaches out there, I'm sure, and I've seen them. I've coached a lot of them, in fact, where they don't eat their own cooking, right? Is they're trying to teach you, I don't know, wealth, but they're not wealthy. Or
Right.
they're trying to teach you growth, but they're not in a growth mode themselves, right? So, and that's tough. Of how do it's kind of, to be able to walk in and say, what's your net worth, or any of those style of questions. It's tough, but I think making sure that you do the homework on the coach, I think that's like really, really crucial.
I love that. Yes, you've got to have, the coach has to have the credibility, the success stories, and I love how you keep saying it. They must eat their own cooking. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. You got fundamental.
I love that phrase. I love that phrase. You know, a question, a final question that I have, and then I'll see if you want to add anything else. But in your opinion, why do you think coaching works?
Well, look, there's never, to my knowledge, been a team go and win the Super Bowl that didn't have someone on the side giving them a hand. And I, I maintain that. I look back at myself, running around a rugby field when I was like 6 or 7. I needed people to say, "Here, run over there, tackle that guy," etc., etc. So, fundamentally, we need support. I think it's a big call if someone running a business thinks that they can do it all by their lonesome, because I just think it's crazy. We all need helping hands. We need accountability around us. And as I said there before, just someone to lean on in the tough times. So for me, it's just a fundamental. I look at people running. Here's this, right? I say this on stage all the time. I say, if you think about it, whether you're an executive or you own a business, right? Most times it's their primary source of income for their family, right? Like it's, and I always say, you got to get that right. Like if you want a decent lifestyle and retirement, etc., you got to nail that. And it's like that's why I go, it's actually intergalactically stupid not to have a coach, because it's like you can't miss. You got to get that right.
I love that. You got to nail your source of income. If you don't have that right, you can't support your family. You can't support your lifestyle. You can't support your dreams.
Exactly. And look, whilst they're there, let me just go on to something that's very passionate for my for the achievers out there. The cool thing is that when you do nail it, right, then you get to do other cool things, right? And this is not this is helping other people. So I'll tell you a quick story here, Monty, because it's a good one. So 5 years ago, I'm in Perth in Western Australia, and basically I'm one of the last ones on the plane, and this gentleman beside me has got a kid beside him, right? And he said, "How you doing?" And I said, "Good." And he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm over here for business." And I said, "Well, what are you doing?" And he said, "Well, I'm here for an operation with the kid." And I'm like, "Well, you don't hear that every 5 seconds when you're jumping on an airplane." Anyway, we got to the plane, and the air hostesses knew he was coming, and I went, "Oh, it must be like a charity situation that he's doing." Anyway, he basically I bid him farewell. So the plane basically goes out to take off and then swings back to the terminal. And basically, they said, "Look, we've got a crew member that's all of a sudden become sick. You all got to get off. You got to deplane." So I'm back in the lounge, and guess who? About 10 meters in front of me, who's sitting in front of me, and it's this guy, right? And I don't normally talk to people in airports, and so I went over and I said, "Look, sorry to bother you, but I can't help remember that you said you had an operation with the kid." And I said, "Well, when is that?" He says, "It's tomorrow morning at 7 a.m." And I said, "We got a problem, because, if we can't get you on an overnight flight, is there any flexibility on the operation?" They said no. And I said, you got a problem. And I said, "If you don't mind me asking, who are you?" And he goes, "Look, I'm a CEO of a charity in Uganda." And I'm like, "Right, okay, tell me about that." And he goes, "Well, look, we deal with the victims of child sacrifice." And I'm like, "What?" Like I'd never even heard that phraseology before. And he goes to me, he said, basically in Uganda, witchcraft is still practiced. And I'm sitting there, and he says to me, and I said, "Well, what's the go with the kid?" And he goes, "Well, look, his father and him were abducted by a witch doctor, right? And his father was decapitated, and the little fella's had his penis cut off." And I'm like, "Holy shit!" I'm in tears. I just was like, "Who does that?" And he's going to Australia for genital reconstructive surgery. So I said to him, "Man, I'm going to help you." And so our business, Monty, over the last 5 years, has donated over $3 million to that charity. We've now got 388 kids in like a kind of a sponsorship, a World Vision. Any of your achievers out there want to get behind that, very happy to help and sponsor a child. But the cool thing is, mate, is you never know where success is going to lead, right? And this is just a random meeting at an airport, and so for me, the other reason why coaching works is because of the success is you can go and help other people who can't help themselves.
Right.
And for me, that's just like, you know, that's the coolness part of it.
That's an amazing story, and I'm really proud of you and honored to know you because you doing things like that. That's amazing. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
That's cool. Well, I really appreciate our conversation. You've told us great stories. There's some critical things that I want to remind our achiever of that you've shared. Number one, it takes a strong person to be vulnerable, and you have to allow that feedback in. That's how we grow. That's how we grow. And great leaders are great coaches. And no matter if you're a coach of a business, coach of a sport, a coach yourself, you are a leader, and you've got to act like a leader. You've got to eat your own cooking. I just love that phrase. And rituals create culture. And the last thing I'll share is that you said was success is a shitty teacher.
That's true.
And the doghouse brings the best learnings. I love that phrase. The doghouse brings the best learnings. So, Bruce, I really appreciate you being on our show. Any other tidbits or any other items you want to share with our audience, the Achiever?
No, look, just for me, thank you again for having me. Final piece of advice coaching out there is, the best investment is in your own education. Go build yourself out and you'll become a better person.
Absolutely. Bruce Campbell, how can we get a hold of you if anybody wants to reach out to you?
So if you go to Bruce at EBS, E for egg, B for Bruce, S for Sam, .org. That's my email address. If you want to sponsor a kid, we've got a heap of them out in Uganda that need help and or anything else. Love to speak at one of your events.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining Why Coaching Works. And thanks to our audience for joining us today. And my challenge to you is to be vulnerable and to open up to that learning of that next step. So thanks for joining us today. We'll see you on the next episode. Thank you for listening to the Why Coaching Works podcast. I hope this episode has helped you see that individual, business, and executive impact, growth, and development that coaching provides. Please take a second to give us a thumbs up and subscribe. Each review helps me impact more people just like you and make a difference in this world. See you on the next episode of Why Coaching Works.